Good morning, and welcome back to the Autodesk booth here on the last day of IBC 2011. If you're watching on the area, hi guys. We're going to take you through our really ultimate finishing solution here, total control in finishing, we call it, with Autodesk Flame Premium. And when you watch those show reels that play by, you've probably seen many Autodesk show reel. You must wonder to yourself, how in the heck do they do that stuff? How much revision, refinement does it take to get to that point? Well, I'm going to show you. I'm going to give you hopefully a little bit of a deep dive into some of that stuff. We have our Flame Premium package here, which is the timeline, grading, and VFX components. So these are different disciplines that you may think of as linear and separate, but we're going to show you how in certain business models you can really take advantage of a non-linear interactive workflow and iterative workflow between these disciplines quickly and easily. There's really two techniques or two technologies that allow that. One is the backbone of the Flame Premium architecture, the timeline, and that is a timeline of shots that can be handed between these different disciplines. We've got some very innovative techniques of dealing with the pressures and problems of your environment. The second thing you're going to see here is a theme relating to the deep use of assets into your pipeline. So being able to take 3D renders, models deep into your post-production and finishing environment. With certainly a look development aspect, we're going to show you some of our really cool relighting and creative look development tools. So let me start here in the Flame Premium. And I've got some basic conform here, and that was kindly given to us by the guys at PsyOp. And there's some really cool shots in here. You might remember this one, by the way. I just wanted to show you. It was in the show reel. This is one of the just a freeze frame out of the master that really shows you how this is where you might start, right? So you've got raw pieces. I think the shot is probably this one. So this is the base scans, film, shot ARRI, perhaps, or I'm not sure actually in this case. Could be anything. We support a whole bunch of different formats in, but you would certainly have a base layer that looks something like this. So how do you start? Well, certainly your conform might include things such as time warps. What we've got here actually is a ramped time warp. That is one of the things through a dissolve, that kind of slow-mo, fast-mo, slide in, slide out. Perhaps this is the first implementation of that. Take a look at it. Okay, we've got a basic conform that matches our offline creative edit. I might then start doing some sort of small-sized visual effects, and I wanted to give you an idea, the building blocks, and just how much you can do right here in the timeline. And we're going to move into some bigger examples of much more complex procedural compositing, again, referenced back to a master timeline. So let's just start with this shot here. Let's say we want to do a license plate replacement. I've got a still graphic here. It's actually a piece of text that I generated using one of our soft effects. Soft effects is our palette of tools that we can apply right on the timeline. We also have batch effects. That's our compositing environment nested per clip. The complete Flame compositing environment available if you'd like. So let's just jump in. I'm going to use one of my tools here. I've got blend to blend layers together. I've got my plugin architecture of sparks, a wipe that I can use for overlays, mattes, and cutouts, and so on, and the axis tool, which is really an odyssey in its own right. It's a combination Kia, DVE, adjuster, roto tool, the whole thing. So what we'll do is we'll jump into a quick track right at the head of this guy here. What we'll do is we'll just take our points here. If I was going to do a license plate replacement, of course it might make sense to take a marker if you got it on the shot or not. This is just a kind of a slightly out of focus end of the image, and you'll be able to see that even on the default settings our trackers are fast, efficient. This is our 2-point tracking. This tracking comes from a bunch of very intelligent people. I like to think, coming from the military business as they did, that they came into entertainment and built these really cool trackers. They gave peace a chance. So you can really imagine that that this is some cool technology we got here. So the ability to be able to combine in that basic tracking move with a bilinear just positioning. It's a quick way of, instead of having to size it up by hand, I'm going to line it in there. You can see it moving through the shot here. I might just fade it out for now to give myself a basic idea that that could be a placeholder for anything that we would bring in, graphics, so on, different license plates for different regions and so on. So that number one, start small. I want to just bounce up to an example of some comps here that you'll see if we just spin down the timeline. Here's one that's kind of two-thirds done. The car is cut out accurately, as in a lot of these pieces you would use nothing but the product in many of these shots, right? And even that gets manicured, believe it or not. They don't. These car commercials don't get shot looking absolutely perfect and silky. Imagine that. But we do have brilliant source assets to work with here. There's really cool shots, but they're going to get highly manicured. This one here just is one example with the complete environment, sky, shadows, ground plane. And then I just want to dig into a shot like this, similar thing. What we'll do is we'll take our pre-batch environment here. This is a way of working within this clip. You may work for weeks on this shot and then just take your setup and plug it into the timeline. But you can start maybe with simple stuff right here and then work from there. Let's just pull out, we have a bunch of different nodes in here. So I've got all kinds of different tools here. You can see that these are our procedural nodes. This is essentially the batch environment, procedural compositing environment of Flame, even though we're working back to a timeline at this point. Action is a special one. It is a 3D world space environment that is just one node in this complete compositing environment. If you're familiar with Flame, this will be first principles, but excuse me for that. But so here we go. So imagine then the assignment ahead of us. What I'm going to do is just going to connect this action in, and what we'll do, we'll actually do a couple of things. What we really need to do here is we want to assign a tracker, right? So what we want to do is there's different kinds of tracks in the system. I'll actually just start right here on this shot so that you can see the task ahead of me is to do a 3D track or a world space analysis. I have a camera environment in here in action, but of course right now we're just looking with a static camera at a plane of video. There's no movement data at this point. So what we do is we take the approach where we maybe just get out one of the big iron tools right away as a foundation for this shot. So what we'll do is we'll come in here and pull out an analyzer node. This is, as the name suggests, it's a kind of a small word for a lot of stuff. It's really a camera analyzer, but before we trigger it, and it can be highly automated, there's a problem with this shot, that is that there's a combination of a moving object and a static object. So all the scenery essentially is static, the car is driving through it. So if we're looking to essentially replace everything around the car, what we need is an analysis of that camera movement, an analysis of the scene, the layout, the ground, the walls. So the way to do that is to grab the static information in the scene. So how do I hold out the car? How do I not analyze the car? Well, we have a bunch of cool tools in here. One of them is our GMAS tool directly in action now. And I can just start by just coming in here and just essentially get a rough outline of the car. What you'll be able to see is that this is really just an estimation process to get an isolation. So this gets us to that. Of course, this shot moves. So what we need to do is we need to do an analysis. Let me just start with a special shape-based analysis of the car. If you think about it, 2-point tracking may not be enough here. And it's going to suffer from the same problem as vertex tracking or the edges, and that's that the reflections move, things are dynamic. Maybe you could grab on the door handles, but check it out. What you would do is you would get out your big iron here. Let's just go straight to that. Hold on a sec. There we go. So I'm just doing analysis, and actually I'll turn on one more button. Hold on a sec. Let's just start from the head. I need to take advantage of skew information or perspective change. and there it goes. So what's happening is it's working inside the shape right now, and it's getting that all-important natural move, shift, twist, bounce data, as well as scale, as you can see here. And it's kind of a neat way of doing this. Of course, we need to do a little more work here to add a couple of keyframes perhaps. We'll start at the end here, and we'll just pull this stuff out a little bit. So we'll grab that guy. Doesn't need to be that accurate at this point. We just want to make sure we don't touch the car. So it's a bounding box outside, if you like. At the midpoint here, just maybe one more keyframe, and then we're set. So we're in a place where we can get a good analysis, excluding the car. That's the next step. Of course, this thing we just built is going to be the foundation for our rotoscoping for the car. We'd refine it up. We've got a lot of tools to do that. But just so you can see, the big picture here, what we would do is we would track outside that shape with the big analyzer here. 100 or more, up to 600 points available to you now, but this is going to do it. You don't need that many points to solve a camera. We just need to essentially pick those points. It's an automated process, especially when you have a holdout mat. It can be pretty straightforward like this. And what you'll see is this return to me, and if I just look at my result view here, you'll be able to see my actual analyzer view here, the points in space. If you have any rogue points, you're going to want to use your fine-tuning tool, delete them. You can filter via quality, shortness, and so on. And just refine that down. Just make sure there aren't any others in there. I think we're doing okay. It's just a quick process to refine. There's one there. So maybe we'll just see if we can do a quality filter, get rid of our poor quality tracks here, and get that drift average down as low as possible. I think that would serve our example here. You can just see if I enlarge my points. This is much like being in a 3D environment where I can then pick points in space that suit me. Let's say we grab that guy right there and add a axis point. So this is really a locator in space that we can now see if we look in our top view right here. So let's just do that real quick for you so you can understand a bit better. Back to our top view. What we have now is this is the new camera over here. We'll hide this one. But what we have now is a moving camera that has a locator in space. So hopefully you can really understand. These are the foundation tools. We take our little object there and just throw a piece of let's just throw something static on there, like a simple piece of 3D text, just so that you can see that the way this works is to draw this out. If we just connect this guy up, you'll see how my text will appear just in space. We'll just offset the center of that so that it sits right on the ground. And very quickly you can get the idea that this is how we get things to stick statically in a moving world. So, with a little bit more refinement, I might take my track, if you like, to the next level in terms of the rotoscoping. So we get to something that looks a little bit more like this around our edges. So now we've got our car cut out reasonably well, with a few more keyframes. The next assignment might be with my client on my shoulder to start look development for a shot like this. So what are we going to do? Are we going to replace the sky, the road? Are we going to have video screens in the background? Are we going to have mirrors? Are we going to have a 5-lane road in there? What are we going to do? So then you would start the next part of your process here by going in and let's just take a look at a really cool tool that's called the perspective grid. It's a technique that we use to actually pick points in space that don't even have to have trackers on them, because we've solved the camera at this point. We know the field of view, so then we can calculate with just a gestural motion here. So cool for artists to be able to just go in with a perspective grid and assign this grid. And I'm actually going to turn off the grid because we're really interested in just the points of the piece. Imagine we wanted to kind of put a video wall over there or a mirror image of the car. That was our first idea. So what I do here is I just take my shot, and I'm going to just grab the points here. I'm going to kind of imagine a point in space here, another point in space there, another point in space here. And the idea is to put an image in there, right? So what we'll do is as I bring my fourth point in, you can see how it's able to figure out exactly the correct orientation, even though I'm guessing the bottom of that pole. But because we have a moving camera, you saw that just now, it's this guy right here, we're able to go in here, and as we scrub through the scene, just like the text, that sits down in place. It's static, appears to be static, sitting in exactly the orientation in front of the camera. So next thing to do would be to plug in an element. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and take one more layer here in my action, and let's go get something that could work. This shot here makes sense as a kind of a mirror layer. And then we might want to treat it. We might want to kind of play with it a little bit. So we have the procedural compositing environment here. We can do color correction, adjustment, blurring, glowing, anything we want here. A really cool tool we have here is called Stylize, and it's a way of getting a kind of painterly effect on your image. It's loaded up with presets as well as sort of unlimited sort of customizability. If I want this to look a bit like newspaper, I can get that kind of look on there. If I wanted a kind of a specific artistic look, I would do that as well. And I'm getting kind of some interesting ideas. If I wanted to, I might go for a kind of a marker look where the individual pieces are kind of outlined. You'll notice that there's some special functions here, such as painting on each frame or not. By not painting on each frame, this is how we achieve a kind of a non-boiling. It's a special algorithm that stops it. If I show you without, you can see it's going to bounce around a bit more. We go paint on, we turn that off. Now it looks a little bit more like that kind of brushed, cartoony style. It's kind of drawn with a marker. So we'll take that for now. We'll feed it into here. And rather than having it as just a free-floating card in space, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and just hook it under my perspective grid. So it's like that is what we want to see here. So this is a great, again, foundation idea. So you can see that's locked in place. We could slip that out of sync, whatever we want, or we could just move it. We could say, you know what, I want to take this guy, I'm going to move him so he sits there. Maybe what I'll do is I'll take a little copy of that, and then we'll do another instance, as we call it, back in the original spot. So this is just a great way of being able to start your design process quickly and easily. Of course, we'd go a little further here, and we would maybe just chop the top and bottom off that. And hopefully you can get a good idea how we can quickly get to something where people are going to say, yeah, that's what I want to do. Or, no, throw it away. Let's do something else. This is exactly the way it's going to go, right? So we want to do the road. And I want to show you a technique where you can come in here and add geometry into the scene and generate substance textures, as we call them. So that's a procedurally generated shader that we have available to us. We have a big library full of it here. And what we'll do is we'll throw in, just by importing a simple geometry at this point, we'll go ahead and grab just a plate. This is one of our stock primitive models. You guys might remember this. It is simply a flat plane that we're going to just drop into a basic orientation relating to the ground plane that we defined, and a size. And then by just moving it over into space, let me just move along into the shot here so you can see. By just sticking it like right about there, you can see that that's in about the right spot. And what we want to do is we want to extend it out further. It's just a big white card. So if I throw a light in, you can see what I mean by that. It's really just going to sit in there. We'll bring our lights up in space. Just one big light here. And you can see how things are going to start reacting to light. The car moves into the light as it comes through. That's because we're working in a 3D environment, right? It's because we have this moving camera. The lights are static. Everything's starting to interact in 3D, even though we're working on just a 2D video plate. So as we come in here, what I'll do is I'll just pull my light further back so you can see what's going on. And we'll take this geometry here and throw a substance generator on there. So we'll just have a quick browse through those so you can see, okay, we have everything from kind of electronic looks, plasma looks, walls, grass, things that you're going to need on a utility level, trying to cover something up in a shot. You can pull out essentially a piece of wall or something that looks a bit like what you're working with. The reason that they're so flexible is that they're not just texture files. These are procedurally generated objects. So, for example, if I were to bring in a cobble street, just for fun here, you can see that this would be like going through Amsterdam or London. And you can start to understand that these techniques actually give us great flexibility. Let me just take my use my high quality adjustment here, and you'll be able to see how you can get these different things dialed in. Let's just go ahead and tile it out. So we're going to tile it like that, and then you can get high levels of customization here. So you can change the age of your look. You can change the amount of moss that's visible. You can sharpen it or blur it out. We can even use our hardware anti-aliasing to improve the quality. But that was just a little side note. That what I really want to do here, of course, is to change preset to something that looks kind of like a road here. So I'm going to drag this one out, and it's going to remember what I started with, but just tile out the road instead. You can see that this is where I would then jump in and say, okay, I want to control some of the basic aspects, like what are the length of the lines in my road, how much damage is there to the street, and so on. So this is something that just is a great little look development tool. We would go with that. We could build it out. We could put a sky plate in that would move via the camera. And we might use a technique that we love to use in the Flame environment called projectors. Even though we're working in the Flame Premium timeline right now, you remember we're actually able to connect this whole thing back to this node, which is going to send us back to the clip. That's essentially one clip within the timeline. What we have here is just a little further along, a big sky wrap, and using a still of this guy here, we're going to put this logo into the scene. And you can see that a great way to do that is with projection. Let me just load this up for you. So this is, perhaps how far you get with this shot. Let me show you a little bit behind the curtain. Here's a wall, or it's just a still that's wrapped around a big bicubic image. There's the car, and then these guys right here are projectors. They're essentially instance projectors. We just did a quick bit of instancing earlier where we took 2-axis nodes and combined them together, but you can string them out like this so they relate to each other, so that there's one that affects multiple ones, and you can get this kind of stretching effect from that. Each one of these is fed from one projector, which of course could be changed. I can move this back and forth. I can change things about that projector. So for example, I could swing these around. See how they're all instanced together? It's just one projector really that is being fed by these different pieces. So essentially, as you run through here, you could just see how get some nice lights placed, some projectors in place. They're all reacting to the light. You can get a nice, a nice looking solution there. Okay, so that's a look at the building process of some of these deeper comps. We wanted to take you into the next step of the process here, which might be, let's imagine on day 2 of your job, you've come a little further, you've built out maybe a basic idea of layered stuff. You've maybe put some basic titles in. You've got this guy looking pretty good. You've got this guy looking hopefully pretty good. I didn't connect it in. This guy's another one, and so on. Your client wants to see where you're at. They want to see, show me the best you've got today. A great environment to do that is in a real-time grading environment, because that's where you can make quick changes to the overall look of the material. You can see that we're still working with ungraded sources here. These are the raw elements, and we want to be able to show put our best foot forward, so to speak. I've actually done a couple of things in preparation for that, as well as having the comps in the timeline here. I also have a matte container, and this is a simple way of adding auxiliaries or deliverables. You can output them from your compositing. Just essentially, these are RGB combined mats. So there's 6 mats there, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I can have unlimited mats, and of course, maybe I won't guess everything I need in a grading environment, but you'll be surprised at just how far you can get with a few mats and a half decent looking comp. So just to review then, what we've been looking at so far is our timeline environment, and we're going to talk about source grading just a little bit. We've got a great new technique to show you here. Imagine, if you will, then, that you've decided you want to use your real-time grading environment to do this. That could be a kind of a flatten this timeline type experience. It could be that you're going to have to work with maybe an EDL overlaid over your edit. Maybe at best you could reconform inside your color grading system. But what you won't be able to do is separate out the pieces of a comp, and then we want to show you how we can also separate out the individual effects. Things like time warps, things like those titles and comps. We can essentially do what we call a source grade model, where we interpret the timeline to be able to grade individual raw sources in any of those formats. And then on the way back to your timeline visual effects environment, is going to rethread it for you. Put the media, graded media at the bottom, and reapply those effects on top. So that's what we call source grading, and I'm going to show you a little bit of that right now. So here we are in our grading environment, and I have the ability here to, I'm just going to look at my timeline real quick so that you can see how things look. Very similar to sort of where we left off, right? So this is a multi-layer timeline, and you can see the pieces in here. You can see I just dragged in the timeline. This is kind of where we left off. But I want to call out to you a few issues. This one is definitely going to be an issue. And if you think about grading, if you wanted to grade the different pieces of that individually, but also as we come into the mat, we're going to show you how we use the mats. But let's just sort of start off working our business of grading here. By the way, this one had a time warp on it. You might remember that. So first thing you would do is show your client your best foot forward, as I said. And let's just say, okay, they decide they have a vision in their mind about how their stuff should look. So what I'll do is I'll just sort of loop through this shot. Actually, let me take one that's not time warped. Let me take, how about this one right here? Actually, let's do this one. This will work great. So then I'm going to just sort of loop on this shot, show you that a great thing about the real-time grading environment is just that, of course, the ability to get your shot dialed in. We also have a control panel for this environment, but let's say that you're just looking for a nice, punchy look. It's all style, isn't it? A dark car at night is going to be a stylistic look. So then we're going to go in here, we're going to trim down lows, medium, highs, make it tweak, make it work, adjust our gammas in there, get it dialed in the way we like. Maybe we'll use another layer here just to isolate out. Let's just grab, the reds, if you like, here to really warm up those tail lights if we want. We can get something looking really cool. Okay, so let's just start with something like that. So we have a bunch of keys in here as well that we would use, or shape system. So we could go in and throw a shape on here. This is going to be like a heavy vignette. So you can see how I can work inside or outside any shape. So this looks like this. I'm going to drop that all the way down, get a nice soft edge on my vignette using a mat that looks like this, right? So these are the building blocks. These are essentially the way you work to get yourself to a base look, which of course then you could ripple through your entire sequence. So I'm just going to say I want to have that. Let's start with that. To start with, we'll put it on all our shots, and then let's just go back and have a quick look at what we got. So you can see now that this is where you might start. You would continue to tweak, nip and tuck, individual shots, shapes, keys, the whole thing. But one of the challenges that can come up is going to be the density differences between shots. For a job like this, that's going to be a big part of it. So let's just take a quick look at a functionality we called group grading. So this is a great technique to what we're going to do is we're going to define a group based on grading, and then we'll select all the shots in our sequence. Same idea. If there was hundreds of shots, this is a great UI to be able to see a lot of shots all strung out together. And then we're going to use our gang mode, first of all, to work with them. So let's go back. We need to be able to see them all, right? So we have a 2-up view, of course, for comparing one shot to the next, as well as a multi-view where we can do up to a 16-way view. What we'll do is we'll just zoom back a little bit here or show this out to our client monitor, perhaps. And what I'm interested in is really the different densities of different shots. So we'll come in here, we'll pick a shot that we're concerned about. Maybe we decide this one is just getting too dark. I'm going to come in here and turn off the... well, actually, let's start with the gang view to get an overall understanding of what's happening here. So you can see if I just start with my master here, I could take the whole mess and take it a whole different color, right? But what I know is this one is just a bit too punchy. So I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to say, okay, let's just work on the, essentially the low gain here and just drive that up. Get that to a place where we can see what we need in there. Oh, excuse me. I forgot to turn off my gang view. I'll just use solo view there to bring this one up. Then I'll go back to gang and I'll then just change my mind again back to the idea of electric blue. So you can just see that this is a kind of a cool technique when you're working in stylized content. I think it's pretty easy to understand that even if you weren't a colorist, if you were a flame guy or a smoke guy, you could work this kind of environment. You've got some powerful tools. Next up then, let's go back to our regular view, and let's just think a little bit more about the issues at hand. We talked about when you have compositing, basic comps, doesn't really make sense to redraw the outline of that wipe that we know we have in our other software in our timeline environment. So what we can do is we can reinterpret this timeline as what we call a source grade. So I'm going to just take this guy right here. I'm going to save my work. So let's just call this one Tuesday at last. Maybe you guys feel that way too. And this is not a source grade. This is essentially the timeline as is. Everything's in context. We're ready to go. But maybe our clients are happy with things. Maybe we just need more flexibility. But we need to. We may be thinking to ourselves, well, when this goes back into effects, I don't really want to bake all this in. What I really want is the raw elements put back into my work to continue on with the changes. Those clients like to make changes, don't they? So we might have that problem. And maybe the change is going to be deep, and there's going to be a lot of them. But let's just go now, and what I'll do is I'll clear the decks here and reinterpret my timeline. I've got a little bookmark here for where it is in my project, and let me just empty this out. I'll go ahead and bring it in, but turning on the source grading button. So this is really just the same timeline, but we're reinterpreting it. You're going to see exactly the difference. So as we look through the timeline here, you'll see these little soft effects markers. There's a few things to note. The first might be that this little stack here is kind of different now. So the way it works is this is a black card that we tracked into place. It's just a piece of virtual black. So it makes sense that that is black. It's got the text soft effect attached to it. Here's the raw piece that was previously vignetted in compositing. Here's the background layer with its dissolves. Well, these dissolves are all virtual, of course, applied here in grading. So that's it translates cleanly. This time warp shot has now got 78 frames of tail. So this is important because that's what was the time warp stretched out. And what we'll do is we'll actually we could even roll out our heads and tails here in this environment to be able to make sure we've done our tracking, done our keying all the way to the end of the shot. It's then going to get rethreaded into a time warp. If you've ever done this kind of work, you probably would have been caught in a situation where you did the job once, it's time warped differently, and you have to redo the job for that reason. But we're going to avoid that by working underneath the time warps. As we work down our timeline here, there's a bunch of these soft effects, and we'll take a look at it as we go. All right, so in this one here, the next thing you're probably thinking to yourself is, well, where's all the color gone? We just brought it in fresh, right? So the way we handle migrating grades or grade retention between similar timelines, for example, editorial changes, is with a technique we call change cut. These are very similar timelines. They're all the same metadata. It's just a different way of interpreting the same thing. So what we'll do is we'll go back to Tuesday at last, which looks like this. And let me just turn off my solo view so you can see everything. And we'll take that and we'll do a change cut over to our latest source grade import. And this is just essentially a simple process. Brings you to here. I'm going to make a new version. So this is the Tuesday source, right? So this is essentially a utility pass, if you like, for us to be able to go through. All the colors are back in place. But now what we can do is we can essentially make sure we've got everything just right for us, dialed in. the way we need it. I guess this one was a plate that we didn't grade, so we'll put a grade on that. These are the kind of things that can be revealed. In fact, if you want to, one really cool technique I use is to sort your entire timeline. Roll out the handles. Let's do an A mode, so program order, or you could do a C mode, so camera ascending time code, which could be useful if you've got similar shots. Sort. And really what this does is this rolls out everything that I have, and you can see that all the things I've missed. The timeline now is temporarily flattened out. This green box indicates that I need to put it back, which is just, again, a little trick that I'll do, an unsort. And then I can make sure that even down to shots like this, that I'm going to just show you a quick example of how you could use our shape tracker again for this. So what I do is I would just use, on another layer here, a track tool. Let's drop in a shape here. I'm just going to draw out like a freehand shape. And just use our shape tracker here to just show you how this is another great place where you might want to do an analysis based on scale, drift, movement. And even if it doesn't work perfectly, this one didn't work so perfect, but you can get the idea that I would then just come in here and pull out essentially the scale, double check that I've got the basic idea here of how it's going to work. This is just a good technique. We would grade through the different pieces. We would also take advantage of that same tracker multiple times to do different things. So you can see in here that I've just done a couple of different layers here for the lights, for the blacking out the license plate, and so on. So this is just a good little technique. When we're all done with our work here, we would want to send back. But I want to just show you one last technique here. And that's our mat grading. So just a neat implementation. We'll go back to our assembly and unsort. We talked earlier about what if you've got a shot that's kind of almost there, and what we'll do here, just take a look how you might be able to take it over the edge with your grading tool. So you could take something like this. You remember the pieces are not very well matched to each other in the bypass view here. What I would do is I would use my mats to grade power, essentially. You can see by this little purple clip here that it has its mats attached. Let's just have a look. These were put on. They were deliverables from the comp, from the Flame side here. And I'll just pick a mat that makes sense. I think what I really want is this one. So then I'll grade through that, get my car working well. So I can get a nice punchy look here, overall look and feel for that. And then I can work outside that mat, which is going to be a perfect mat because it's the mat that was used to comp, right? Next layer down, I'll pull out one of my other secondaries here. So we'll just have a quick look. I think that I might want to work with this one, manipulate it a little bit. Let's just overdrive it. Let's combo in some of our own creative ideas for like a kind of a faded off hot spot in the sky. And then as we start working with this, what you'll notice is that there's a small problem with the cut into the car, but that's okay. You remember we had a secondary down here. This was our car. This is our sky. I'm going to just use some Boolean ops to link them together, choose how I want to combine them. I want the inverse of that. So this is going to be great. This is going to be an easy way to get this kind of dialed in a little further if that's what we want individually. So it's pretty cool how you can go from something that was looking pretty basic, or the decent comp, to something that maybe that'll work as a final, or maybe this is a good kind of, we get it, you guys need to add some more creative light stuff. You need to be able to pull something out of nothing. You want to be able to add volumetric light, and that was the next thing I was going to show you. So if essentially this would be a send back to the timeline or VFX environment to continue really just taking these shots to the next level. So to really whet your appetite, I wanted to play you back the final from PSYOP of this piece. It's some pretty cool stuff and certainly shows the very iterative, manicured nature of this kind of work.
We had the idea of the world's most efficient engines. The idea of headlights more intelligent than ever. And the idea of assistance systems that are the most innovative yet. Well, then we had one or two additional ideas. speaking of ideas, automatic distance control. The new Passat.
Volkswagen. Das Auto.
So you can see what I mean about the only thing that's left is the car, and that is lots of CG pieces. It's the original footage with a new background, with a new overlaid car. You got the idea. So it just gives you an idea of just how much you do. Here's where we started before we went to grading. So this is our timeline. A couple of comps in there. Here is the return from grading. You see, this was my first grade back, if you like, and it looks not a flat sequence, not a bounce down sequence, but what we call a source graded sequence where everything is still available to us. So here's the graded pieces. If I go in here, you can see that this is still a tracked license plate piece that we could play with if we wanted. We could still adjust it further if we needed. It's just a piece of text that's thrown in there. If we look down here, this is our wipe effect, if you like, that is still editable between the two graded pieces of media. So this is really powerful to be able to have this flexibility, even if you have to go through, imagine you go through multiple iterations of that grading process, do a bit, bring through, grade through, come back. So this is really cool, and we're really excited about being able to do things like take time warps back through, and of course here's our comp that is as good as we thought. We got it pretty good, but we need to go a little further with it. Here's the graded backplate that also got graded as a special element here that I'm going to just work with a bit more to show you how we get some of those really high concept lighting effects filled in here. So kind of cool stuff. We'll start with the 2D car here, and you can see that what we have is this is the piece that made it. We have our output mats. You might remember those that helped us with grading. Those are some of the deliverables from the action environment. But what we wanted to zero in on was the actual power of having a 3D environment. Here's our wrapped sky, same as we looked at earlier, right? But what I have is I have a raw plate, or essentially a graded plate now, that is the car. This lighting effect in here is obviously limited by the edges of the car, and it'd be great to echo that, wouldn't it, digitally? And that's exactly what we're going to do. What we'll do is we'll just pull out some of our preset lens flares for you so that you can see how this works. So we have a whole library here of there's our particle library, but we also have a lens flare library, creative and realistic. And you can take a pick of the one you like or highly customize them from here. What's really special about this, I think, is that these are real 3D flares that are going to appear in space and are going to react to your camera move. We're not stamping on an effect. We're integrating it into our world space compositing environment as a volumetric lighting effect. So let's take this realistic kind of anamorphic-y looking thing. Let's see what we can do with that. That one looks like it should be in Star Trek. It's pretty cool. All right, so what I'll do then, my light is actually behind me right now, so we'll go ahead and show you the little lighting rig here. You could start simple, or you could work from a preset. There's many components that can make up a complex lens flare, but this is my guy. I'm going to take this guy and just put him in the back of the shot, so let's just do that real quick. We'll see that what we really want here is something more like, let's send it all the way back like that. And hopefully you can really see, if I just turn it on and off, the impact that it has on the scene. If we play with the pivot point here, I'm just going to lift the lens flare up so that you can see how it sits in space. We could overdrive it, of course, get a really intense lens flare, or a much more subtle one. But the thing that's significant about this, as I said, is that it's interacting with my camera-based movement. So I got a camera track shot, just like we saw earlier. The light is a static element that moves. And as you can see, even though all these pieces are going together, we can still move through with some interactivity, and we're able to then customize it even further. So if we wanted to, we would just take a look at how the light is occluding as it goes behind things. If I just pick it up and move it around, what you're about to see is that if I go around the back of the car here, this is all reacting based on the camera position. And as I said, it's actually going to pop out behind the car if I put it there, because the camera's moving. And if we just jump down the shot here, you can see how things look really cool. We'd customize it a bit more. We would line it up, maybe get it looking like the physical one. But a cool little concept for creative look development. All the time that we've been working, we have not yet been working with any 3D assets. We've been on our own. This is essentially this car is a plate that we are essentially orbiting around here with our camera right now. This is the perspective view. If I just zoom in real quick, you'll be able to see that. It's a large scene, but it should give us a good idea of how things look. We'll just come over here. So that's just essentially a video plate car that's getting driven by the camera. The lens flares all in there. The whole environment is laid out behind it. There's the shadow. You can see it. So what if, I want to give you a what if you had a CG artist like they obviously did there at PsyOp to interact with, and you wanted to essentially take the best advantage of those assets. There are going to be several things that would come to you. One may well be some EXR renders. If they took the time to lock down register the car so they could bounce the balls off it, those particle system balls, they would be able to give you render passes that looked a bit like this. This is an OpenEXR source. It's a floating point image, and that means that I can view it in its correct color space here and change the exposures here to see that high dynamic range that's living and breathing in this file all the way up there. So it's great to be able to work with floating point media directly. The kind of thing you might do with this is to combine it and blend it with your original car and wrap it around a CG model. So that's what we'll do next. And this is where you get the ultimate flexibility for lighting the panels of the car, reflections, as well as the scene around it. Because that's essentially been one thing we haven't been able to do yet. I blend together, if you like, the real life graded plate and a reflection pass. So this is the reflection, that's the CG reflection. I could use one or the other or both. I'm going to use a blend of the two, and we're going to get some really cool kind of rim lighting and adjustments and so on. So then the second asset that you may ask for would be an FBX file that included the car. You may or may not need the camera. If you generated the camera here, you would just need the car to sit in place. But you could import cameras and cars and lights. We're even able to work with animated mesh geometries these days. And we're going to show you later on in a presentation some of that stuff. But so imagine you're starting here like this. Here's our car in the environment, and you'll be able to get the idea that this is a model of the car. If we just have a quick look through our wireframe view here, you can actually see the different pieces that are available to you. So you can work with the wheels, the body of the car, the sheet metal paint. The lights that come in could be static in the scene, or they could be attached to the car. I'll show you some of that stuff. And it's kind of neat the way that you can do extra things if you'd like, such as take advantage of hardware anti-aliasing for very high quality results on your CG. So you can just see how that gets rid of the wrigglies. If you'd like a very high quality image to project onto, it's not that critical for projection, but certainly if you use the model as is, it's kind of handy. Ambient occlusion is also possible here. So I would just jump back in there and show you how we would output here. We can set on our output some AO. Pretty cool stuff. This is, as well as shadows, you may want to consider one of these higher quality lighting effects, which will essentially impact your look. But specifically, the next task ahead of us here is to then take our source, which is going to be a blend of the foreground and CG, and wrap it around the model. And so you can understand this. If I shift this side to side, you can see how this is actually a projection on the scene itself. In fact, if I just move the camera a little bit, you'll be able to see how things work. Or maybe if we just look at, we'll do this. We'll just unhide that, and we'll go to a perspective view on the scene so that you can see how things are working. So the CG and the live action combined are being projected onto the car, and of course I would view it from the point of view of the camera. If you look all the way around the edges, things are not going to work perfectly, but it's amazing, isn't it, just how much of it works and how you could even change the camera angle a little bit here if you wanted to get this basic environment to work with this. Now, lights are a big part of how we really finish off the look of something. So let's just take one of our lights here and show you that as we move them around, you can see the lighting affecting different parts of the scene. Maybe we'll just pull it forward a little bit here so that you can see how this works. So if I put my light over here and over crank it, I'm going to add a lot more light to this side of the car. I've also got other lights such as directional lights here to nuance the look, different colored lights. You could get these from CG so they'd be just the way they rendered it, or you could make your own. And what I might do here is just show you how we have a really cool little technique here that involves connecting the different. Let me just look at this for you so you can see. What we have is a hanging from the car geometry. These are the different pieces of the geometry that came in. Here's essentially a wheel light that is really designed so that you could. Let's go back to this. This is a little negative lighter. So what I'll do is I'll just show you how over here. It's actually this guy right here. Oh, where'd he go? Oh, there he is. So then this is a light that's designed to kick down the wheel. It's kind of confusing. This one over here is designed to brighten up the grill. You can see the live action mixed with the CG there. We can still play further with this if we want, adjust how this looks, define it, brighten it, and so on. One last thing to do would be, you can see how that follows the car through. It's kind of neat, huh? It's just a neat little technique. One last thing to do might be to take your lights and add a really cool sort of blooming effect. We have a way of making the geometry glow here, which is kind of neat. If we take this guy, let me just take my bloom node here. And what I can do is I can overdrive that for you just so that you can see that it sits in the scene like this. And if I move my light around, which is currently over here, you can see how it changes the lighting, and I could get a subtle or not so subtle effect glowing the rims of the car if I want, get a softer, tighter effect if I want. It's really just a neat little tool, and it's great to be able to break, to be able to have this not just on video but on real life geometry. It's effectively a 3D glow, if you like. So, last little thing, tie the bow on here might be, I just want to show you a little creative use of the glow technology that I used here, just by separating out the, let me just take the glow here, separating out the pieces of a standard glow here. So there's just a bunch of glow balls from a lens flare that I'm just separating out with some variants to sort of get a neat looking effect that gives us this kind of flyby look development, perhaps for the particle system that may be further refined. But just a really neat idea of how things could look when you have the power of Flame Premium for your what we call total control in finishing. So thanks. You've been listening to this presentation of Total Control in Finishing. My name is Will Harris. Have a good rest of show, guys. Looking at the timeline, grading and VFX pieces of Flame Premium. Thanks.